vehicle was the width of a wagon track so that it could roll along easily on the ruts of the trails. Between the wheels was a sort of wagon box or platform made of 4 or 5 planks, about 3 feet wide and 4 feet long, to hold bedding, cooking utensils, clothing, flour, and other provisions that Nanny and Ella stored there. The planks were nailed to 2 frame pieces that extended forward to form the shafts. Fastened to the 2 shafts was a crossbar. The space between the shafts accommodated 2 persons, but Andrew would pull the cart himself while the women pushed. The cart, empty, weighed 65 pounds. Andrew had said that the handcarts were a brilliant idea, proposed by the prophet himself, that allowed even the poorest among them to make the journey to the Great Salt Lake Valley. Andrew, Ella, and Nanny never could have paid for the trip to the Promised Land if they'd had to lay out $300 for a team and wagon. But a handcart for the 3 of them cost less than $20, and what's more, the church loaned them the money for the journey, which they would pay back once they were settled in Utah and Andrew found work. It wasn't just the cost, however. The 3 emigrants knew that the carts would make the trip faster than any wagon because the people wouldn't have to worry about livestock. Hitching up the oxen each morning, gathering feed, hunting for the animals if they wandered off. Moreover, the handcarts wouldn't have to carry all the supplies needed to reach the valley, since resupply stations would be set up along the way. So, with the other saints, they could average 15 miles a day across the 1,300 miles of prairie and mountains from Iowa City to the valley. That meant a trip of less than 3 months.
But I canna walk all that way. I've never walked more than 5 miles at a time, and down a country lane outside Edinburgh at that. How can you ask it?
Ella had inquired when she first heard about the carts. The exercise in the fresh air will strengthen you, the missionary speaking to the gathering in Scotland had replied.
What if I get taken in sickness, or break my leg and had the hurple?
There will be wagons for the lame and infirm, as well as the elderly.
But I'm...
Embarrassed, she looked down at her stomach, which was still as flat as a flat iron. Of no consequence, sister. Other women, much further along, have crossed the prairie, some all the way to California. And as I told you, there will be the wagons for those who can't walk. Ella discovered in Iowa City that there were only 7 wagons, filled now with supplies and freight, for the infirm among the 650 emigrants, however. Still, Ella believed the elder who had spoken, since this group, called the Martin Company, for its leader, Edward Martin, a Mormon missionary who had served in England and Scotland, was the last of the 5 handcart companies to cross the prairie that year. The Willie Company had left 2 weeks earlier, not long after Andrew, Ella, and Nanny arrived. Ella said the shortage of wagons must mean that the elders were sure in the knowledge that few fell sick on the overland trail. The Lord would give them strength, the missionary promised her. As Ella stood behind the cart, waiting for the signal to move, examining a splinter that had worked its way into her hand, she thought again of walking the hundreds of miles and hoped the missionary was right. The sisters heard shouts then, a creaking as the first carts, some lined up on the road, others spread out across the prairie, moved forward in a jumble, cries as parents called to their children, shouts of praise to the Lord, a few prayers. Ella had thought they would move out with a song, a trill of the cornet, a flash of lightning, or a boom of thunder rolling across the prairie, something to herald the momentous occasion, but there was nothing. With no ceremony at all, the first carts began to move, and then the ones behind them.
"Andrew?"
Ella called.
"I can see,"
he said, although he had been studying the poor piece of wood in his hand instead of watching the line of carts. Now he looked up at the procession of conveyances in front of him, his face as open and shining as the sun above them, and turned to his wife and her sister. All traces of impatience gone, he grinned and called,
"Ready to roll on, are you? Ready to roll to Zion?"
"Aye," Ella and Nanny cried. And as Andrew strained to push the crossbar, the 2 women leaned hard against the back of the car.